The Chargers 2022 draft class is now complete, and on today's show, we're talking about exciting new RB2 Isaiah Spiller, and also talking about the Chargers finding an absolute steal of an offensive lineman in the sixth round.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together for over 6 seasons. We're heading into our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you on this post-draft Monday for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But David, the draft class is complete. We did talk about first and third round picks last week in Zion Johnson and JT Woods, but then we got more picks to talk about, 6 more to be exact. And on today's show, we're going rounds 4, 5, and 6, or at least the first pick of the 6th round for the Chargers, and an exciting batch of guys to talk about, starting with Isaiah Spiller. The Chargers needed to get an RB2 coming out of this draft class, and I think they got the consensus third best running back in the class. That's not bad at pick 123. And there are obviously some detractors, but I think there's a lot to be excited about there. And Austin Eckler now has somebody who can help share the load. And we'll also talk about new defensive tackle Tito Obonya, one of a guy from UCLA that really impressed the Chargers, reportedly in their workouts, private and also at the Senior Bowl, and got himself a 5th round pick. And then one of the best value picks of the draft, in my opinion, starting guard, potentially Jamari Salyer, a guy who's played all over the offensive line. And me and David will just wonder aloud how that dude somehow fell to the Chargers in the 6th round, because it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And David, the show starts with Isaiah Spiller. And this is a guy that I didn't think the Chargers would have a chance at, because I didn't think they'd be taking a running back with the 79th overall pick. And that is around where I thought Isaiah Spiller would go. He is one of those guys who is pretty much a consensus top 3, top 4 round pick, and he goes to the Chargers at 123 midway through the 4th round. But a guy who has a super impressive resume as a running back. And I mean, if you're talking about the level of prospect this dude was, as opposed to their last couple of draft picks in Larry Roundtree and Josh Kelly, this is on a different planet, David. And I think this is the Chargers giving the best shot so far that we've seen of someone since Melvin Gordon being that second running back that can take that role and run with it.
Yeah, I think there's no more messing around, right? I think they took a couple of shots in the dark in the draft a couple of drafts ago, and it just wasn't the right answer, at least up to this point. And I think with Isaiah Spiller, when you put on the tape, there's a lot of reasons why you feel like this one very well could be the answer, or he very well could be the answer here. Back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, averaged 5.5 yards per carry pretty much every year, and he got better every single year that he was in college. So you got to love that. As far as, what he does well is a lot. I mean, he displays very good vision and patience. He allows the blocks to set up in front of him. He showcased a very good ability to stop and start and really put his foot in the ground and change direction and go. There's a lot of forced missed tackles on the tape. That's something that Brandon Staley had mentioned. Shows very good power and contact balance. It seems like he can really bounce off of defenders and keep going. I put a clip out there on Twitter at DroTalkSD of one of his, just grown man touchdown runs where, he just bounced right off a defender and kept on going and just rumbled all the way into the end zone. So you love that. Fantastic pass protector too. As far as a college running back is concerned, I feel like he really has the ability, if he knows his assignment, to really stone guys that are coming after the quarterback. Like he did that on a repeated basis. I think it's probably something he could be a little bit more consistent with from time to time. Also, fantastic pass catcher too. He had really soft hands. I didn't really see him drop very many passes. He was very, very consistent. Seemed like he's a very good weapon as far as that's concerned. Very good very good runner, and very good pass catcher as a running back as well.
Yeah, and that's what you heard a lot from Brandon Staley when recapping the day 3 picks was just how much of a complete player that Isaiah Spiller is, and that is true. I mean, 74 career catches in 3 seasons. That's a ton for a college running back. He's very smooth too on wheel routes, and angle routes or something they love to run with him running away from linebackers, and then once he caught the ball, he definitely was dangerous in the open field when he could get into the secondary. I mean, there are things that you don't like, but I think on today's show, obviously, these are all prospects, and we don't know how any of these players are going to turn out yet. But one thing that we can do is try to find out why the team wanted to draft them there, right? By looking at the things and the potential you could see out of these players in the positive more than anything, right? I think that is the most important things is what are these teams trying to build on? And when you're looking at him, I mean, all of those things you said, I mean, definitely an advanced pass catcher. Yes, I mean, the pass protection definitely had times where like he's chipping on a guy helping out the tackle instead of picking up a blitzer. And those are all things that can get better. But even for a guy who's an average athlete to force as many missed tackles as he did with just the footwork and just not being able to just always outrun people and being as crafty as he was and finding the creases and openings that he did, I wouldn't say he's like just a thumping running back by those, dimensions that you would see from like a Brandon Jacobs or someone like that. But he finds the hole and he makes the most out of it, especially last year when he didn't have a great offensive line in front of him. He had a first round pick in Kenyon Green. There wasn't much outside of that, but I think that is the only detractor from him is just being an average athlete by NFL standards. And I think just because you're not as athletic at a position doesn't always mean you're not as talented. Because I mean, it's hard to look at this dude going up against SEC defenses, David, and not think that this dude is talented. The only other kind of knocks I would have is 6 career fumbles is not great. Some poor moments in pass protection, which just needs to be more of an assignment thing more than just a want to, because he wants to crack dudes back there. And a lot
Yeah.
of times last year with a poor offensive line, he stopped his feet behind the line of scrimmage, which in the NFL level, the dudes are just too fast. Like being patient is one thing, but you also have to kind of take what you can get. He did that a lot of the times, but some of those times stopping his feet ended up in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that for sure. I mean, I think I didn't see a whole lot of negative runs on the tape. The only time it was really, noticeable is when there was a free defender coming after
Sure.
him. There's not a whole lot you're going to be able to do in those situations. They
Yeah.
get such a good jump, and they got you on the ground before you can even react. But not a
When
lot of
even
negative
with that,
runs.
like, I mean, those things are all nitpicking, right? The dude is a
Yeah,
really, really good prospect. I think the projection and why he wasn't just drafted higher, I mean, thinks it just has to be because of that athletic ability, because he was still making people miss. And I think David,
hmm
obviously, right now, he's the guy to beat. Like, he's Austin
oh yeah.
Eckler's backup until further notice.
Oh, 100%. I think that, the where they drafted him at in the 4th round, I think indicates that. And also just the skill set that he brings to the table. I mean, as a prospect, as a running back, I mean, he's pretty high up there with his skill set, with his ability to make people miss in the open field, with his power, his contact balance, his receiving ability, the way he can pass protect. I mean, he has a skill set that he's bringing to the NFL level that's already very polished in comparison to a lot of other players that the Chargers have brought in to try to solve this RB2 position. I feel like this guy has the best makeup and profile and skills that he's bringing to the table to really finally fill this position, and you feel very good about it. I mean, he was a guy that didn't get all the carries, right? I mean, I think we were talking before the show. You said what, 40% of the carries?
42%
Yeah.
according to Dan Brugler, yeah, his senior year in 2021.
Yeah, so I mean, but I think that's a blessing and a curse, right? Because he doesn't have all of those carries, not all the tread that's been worn off the tires, if you will. He's still going
Sure.
to be able to come in, and also he's not coming in to be the number one back. That's Austin Eckler. He's going to be there to spell Austin Eckler and complement Austin Eckler. And I feel like you just want a guy that when you bring him onto the football field, you're not going to see a tremendous drop off from him to Austin Eckler. And I feel very confident that I don't think that that's going to be the case with Isaiah Spiller.
Yeah, and I mean, he could be great just like he was in college, right? And I think the other thing is too is he's going into such a good situation where he's not going to be needed to be that bell cow back
Yes.
early on in his career. Obviously, if Austin Eckler is healthy, he's the number one guy. And I mean, this is just the best person we've seen have this job. Because the thing is, you said where they take him, right? They took Josh Kelly in the 4th round too.
Yeah.
Biggest difference is that was a different regime. Larry
Right.
Roundtree, he was a Brandon Staley led team, right? That was a pick that was made while he was the head coach. Josh Kelly, a little bit different, right? And he's had 2 years now, and they've had 2 years to try to figure it out. The Chargers also added a super fullback as well that we'll talk about tomorrow. So an athletic freak to talk about some fullbacks. But coming up next, we're going to be talking about an addition to the interior for the Chargers, needing some depth on that interior still. They went out and got UCLA defensive tackle Tito Obonya. So we're going to talk about what he brings to the table and how quickly he could be a factor for the Chargers coming up after this. But I do need to tell you guys, the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast is betonline.net, because BetOnline is your number one source for all betting and stats and all sports information that you're looking for. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and Major League Baseball, which is going on right now as well. You can even check out UFC, some big underdogs cashed over the weekend. That's always something where you get a puncher's chance to win a lot of money. And if you're looking for fun tournaments and fun prop bets, especially, I had a ton of fun with the draft, but they always have a ton of prop bets going on at BetOnline. You can also do live betting where you can change your fortunes as well and make sure you're staying up to date with everything going on. Nothing worse than when sites you don't have that live betting option. If you miss the tip off, you're done betting on that game. With BetOnline, you have so many options to choose from. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn all about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David, we talked about fourth round pick Isaiah Spiller at 123. And then the fifth round, the Chargers went a little off the wall. A guy that we hadn't really talked about on this show, a defensive tackle, maybe a position we didn't know if they would want to address there given their needs. And we'll talk about how the Chargers address those later on in the week, as far as the positions they missed and the positions that they filled. But Tito Obonya is a guy that they are very familiar with. There are reports that they had, firsthand views of him at working him out. And Brandon Staley spoke to that. They did really like what he did in the practices with them. And they had, their defensive coaches run him through a bunch of drills. And he said he aced those tests, which was nice. And the other thing this guy did to really, really improve his stock during the offseason was at the Senior Bowl. We know the Chargers love the Senior Bowl. Tom Telesco loves the Senior Bowl.
Sure do.
And Brandon Staley loves the Senior Bowl. And one of the things that Brandon Staley talked about with Tito Obonya, who's a defensive tackle who, just as far as a prospect, right? A huge dude, another big time space eating type of defensive tackle, is he went up and had some really successful reps against guards like Zion Johnson and Cole Strange. Some, 2 first round picks, because I forgot the Patriots took that dude in the first round, but he had some really, really impressive reps against the top players in the country. And it seems like that's really what kind of pushed the Chargers over the edge to end up taking this dude in the 5th round.
Yeah, guy's gigantic, 6'4", 326 pounds. He has a extremely large frame. Like the dude is massive. 4.5 sacks in 3 years, so he's not going to bring a lot of pass rush ability here. 27 tackles. He did have 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 2 passes defensed, mixed in with 1 forced fumble. He does not get moved off his spot, very, very often. If he's able to anchor, I didn't see him really get moved very much. He's an effective run defender that is a pretty solid tackler. If he gets his hands on you, he's going to bring you to the ground. He uses his hand strength to get off of blocks, and also saw him use a pretty decent swim move to be able to defeat double teams from time to time. So those are a couple of things that I liked about his game.
Yeah, I think there is a lot to like about his game and a lot to have questions about with the prospect like Obonya, especially when you're looking back and, kind of ignoring the, testing process and the offseason events like the Senior Bowl and stuff like that. There are some things he has to work on, which we'll get to. But I think when you're looking at a prospect like this and why the Chargers would be interested, there's one thing that Brandon Staley has prioritized over most things on the defensive interior, and it's length. It's something that he just loves out of these dudes. And he has that in spades, right? This guy has long arms. He can lock out offensive linemen. And he also has really good awareness for the ball carrier, too. You can see him almost always finding a way to get near the ball on most plays if it's in his, vicinity. I really like those plays. They don't happen all the time, but you can see, okay, hey, if we can get that out of that dude, that can turn into something. I also think for him specifically, there are a lot of positives, and the other positive too is just the situation he's going into, right? When the Chargers took, for example, Jerry Tillery, right? They needed him to come in and produce right away, and they need him again to come produce this year, right? Because there's not a lot of pass rush coming from Tito Obonya, at least not right now. He's very raw in that aspect, but he gets to go into a rotation that just, added Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson. He doesn't need to come in and be the starter right away, and I wouldn't want him to. But you see David with the size, with the great length. He does have a powerful punch. He has a lot of upper body strength. I think he was top, 4 or 5 in the combine as far as bench press reps. I want to see him get, some more strength and what he looks like when he has time to actually, strength and condition with a professional football team and things like that. But I at least can understand kind of the building blocks they're looking for. This guy's definitely a developmental guy early on.
Yeah, I mean, I really love the point that you made about not having to be the guy right away, because I don't think that, that would be the best way to get the most out of Obonya. He's just not ready to come in and step in and be, you're a 3-down player. Just there's things that in his toolbox that need to be added to. I mean, some of the things, some of the negatives, some of the opportunities that he has to get better is sometimes he's a little bit slow getting off the line of scrimmage. I mean, his get off is not that
I wouldn't say
explosive that
special. Yeah.
yeah, it's not special. Not a lot of lateral agility or quickness. He just, he doesn't. That's not really part of his game. And like I said, he doesn't offer much as a pass rusher. He has a bull rush. He can definitely use the bull rush, but I think he needs to get in there and get in with guys like Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, and really kind of just go through a masterclass on how to use your hands effectively, how to build the pass rush repertoire and the counters. I think that's something that really needs to be developed as part of his game. But also, I was just kind of thinking to myself, Daniel, it seems like they have a particular profile on the interior, the defensive line that they're kind of looking for, that they want to bring into the fold. And I don't know if they value interior pass rush with the profile that they're trying to add to the team.
I mean, I agree with you from a standpoint of, yeah, I mean, definitely there's a profile that they're going for, right? They want guys who are less of, penetrators, and they want guys who can hold up at the line of scrimmage, lock out an offensive lineman, right? And be able to
Yeah.
make a play in 2 gaps.
Yeah.
And that's something that this guy would have the, potential to do. But I don't know if it's necessarily not valuing interior, pass rush, but like, if they were going to find a good interior pass rusher, like there was maybe a handful in this draft class, and they would have had
Yeah.
to spend a pretty penny to do it. I mean, like Devontae Wyatt, like that dude has, was refined comparatively for sure in this defensive tackle class as a pass rusher. And there's a couple other guys as well, but like interior pass rushers are incredibly hard to find. So I don't think it's that they're not valuing it. I think it's just that there was no point where that kind of value made sense for them in this draft class, just because those dudes you just don't find out in the wild very often. You don't find, Chris Jones, growing on trees or anything.
That's
But
true.
the one place I will disagree with you is I do have questions about the anchor, especially against double teams and things like that. I mean, I think most of the time, if it's a one-on-one block, you're not going to see him just get blown out of the play by any means,
Mm-hmm.
But there was double teams where he got washed out of the play, and there was times where he was able to be controlled and didn't have the anchor to really, sit down and at least, cause chaos or force it to stop in front of you. I mean, that just
Yeah.
didn't happen enough for a guy who's a defensive tackle and run stuffing guy. Like, this is not a guy who's going to come in and be an elite run stuffer probably at the NFL level, just because there was just too many times at the college level where I was seeing him get moved out of the way by double teams. I think the lower half is what he has to work on the most, because that's usually where that anchor is coming from, right? It's in those legs. Obviously, you do 29 bench press reps. You have the upper body strength to have the punch that he has. You're doing something right, but I think it's more of a lower half thing. But I do think, at least in watching his tape, it seemed like he got in a lot better shape between last year and this year.
Yeah.
He looked like a sleeker player this year. Definitely looked like that in the offseason circuit as well. I thought he looked pretty good, and definitely seems to be focused on his conditioning and not something that's, totally out there. An average athlete, even by defensive tackle standards, but at the same time, it's all based on his 40-yard dash. I saw people out there, talking about how poor his RAS score was, but it's like, that's literally based on size in this case, because they're taking his measurements and his bench press rep and
Yeah.
only the 40-yard dash. You cannot do it with just those numbers. Who cares what a defensive tackle runs their 40
Doesn't
time
matter.
in?
Yeah.
I mean, usually those are more about the 3-cone drill, the shuttle drill, trying to get that agility grade kind of thing, right? And
Right.
that's the explosive grades with the broad jump, the vertical jump. He didn't do any of those things. So that, I mean, is something you kind of have to leave RAS out of it, which is
Yeah.
easy for me to say because I'm that guy, right? As soon as the bad one comes out, yeah, don't worry as much. But I'm not worried about his athleticism for what I think the Chargers want to do. But it's nice to plan ahead, right? Because the whole thing with like Justin Jones and letting some of those guys leave in the offseason was just like Linval Joseph included, right? What do you have behind them? You don't have like
Yeah.
a true backup plan. It seems like the Chargers in this draft class had a plan to keep building up the depth and giving them some better options going forward to have some guys and younger guys step in eventually.
And a bigger guy too, right? You're adding size. You're
Yeah.
continuing to add size to
Adding
your
girth.
defensive
Yeah.
line and your offensive line. They, Brandon Staley said many times they want to be a line of scrimmage team. Well, I mean, it's definitely showing with the investments that they've made on the lines.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a guy I think overall, like it's exciting. He has exciting traits that you can, but I just wouldn't expect too much early on. Let's let this guy
Right.
get in. Let's let him develop and see what he can turn into. Because Brandon Staley is personally vouching for him. The Chargers defensive staff is personally vouching for him. Let's see how it plays out. But you want to talk about dudes that are adding size to the team? I bring you Jamaree Salyer. The dude is a walking house. That's just one of the notes. We'll get into why I think he's the best value the Chargers found in this draft class and much more coming up right after this. But the best value in protein bars, David, give you one guess. Built Bar. Built Bar are the best protein bars out there because they're the best tasting protein bar out there. But you get great value as well because in every Built Bar, you're getting something that tastes like a candy bar but fits on your diet as well. And that's just not something that's supposed to be allowed in human life. It's just really not. It's supposed to have to pick one or the other. It's supposed to taste like broccoli, right? Or it's just not going to be good for you. With Built Bars, you're getting something that's packed with 17 grams of protein. Most bars have 130 calories or less, while also having less than 4 grams of net sugar and 4 grams of net carbs. And right now, guys, there are so many good Built Bar flavors to choose from that you'll never get tired of them. And that's one of the things I truly appreciate about Built Bar. I mean, even though, they also get sent to my house, and I very much appreciate that. But I have always flavors to switch up. And especially when I'm dining and things like that, I mean, you definitely want to mix it up so you don't get tired of the same thing. There's so many different flavors to choose from, and you can get mix boxes where you can try a bunch of different flavors and find out which one is your favorite. But make sure you try out Built Bars, try out the Built Bar Puffs, try out the Built Granola Bars. So many good options at built.com. And since you listen to this show, you can even save some money. Go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, David. Well, last but very much not least, right? We have one of the best value picks of the entire draft, not for even just the Chargers. I think it's the Chargers' most valuable pick. And we're not going to be getting into grades and with a value, but just wasn't expecting the Chargers to be able to get this dude where they did. And we're talking about offensive tackle Jamari Salyer from Georgia, who projects more to the NFL level as a guard. But this dude was the left tackle on the national championship Georgia Bulldog team, right? That's where this dude comes from. That's his pedigree. But thank you guys again for making us your first listen on this Monday after the draft, where we're talking about all these prospects. On tomorrow's show, we'll be getting into the other 3 draft prospects we aren't getting into on this show, including a super fullback that we have to talk about that was not on my radar. I mean, I'm excited to get into that and a couple of cornerbacks as well. But Jamari Salyer, David, what happened? I mean, this was a dude. I think Dan Brugler had him in as his 52nd overall prospect, his 3rd ranked guard overall, or 4th ranked guard. This dude, I mean, has a crazy pedigree. Like, he has starts at left tackle. He handled the left tackle position in the SEC by only giving up 1 sack over the last 2 seasons. In that 1 sack game against Will Anderson, who's literally like probably a top 3 pick and the leader in sacks across the country this year in college football. So, I mean, that's we'll let that one slide. But this dude projects more as a guard. And I think, David, I mean, when you're getting this guy where the Chargers did, right? When you're finding this pick at 195, I mean, I was shocked that he was still there. I'd kind of assumed he was already gone, but I definitely got excited about this pick.
I mean, of course, I got excited. I mean, this is one of the guys that I had profiled in the draft.
Did you do that for the guard show or the tackle show? I forgot to ask you.
I'm pretty sure I did it for the guard show, man. But
yeah.
I mean, I am super excited that the Chargers were able to get him in the 6th round, and I am astonished because I expected him to go in the 3rd or 4th round. I thought that was the type of pedigree and profile these bring to the table. 6'4", 325 pounds, another very large human being. First note here, extremely strong. This dude is just ridiculous. Like he mauls people in the running game. Like if you're in his way, you won't be for long because he is going to run over you. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. He is that nasty. He brings that temperament that you love, especially on in an interior offensive lineman. Although he brings a lot of great versatility as well, Daniel. He played at least 39 snaps at every position on the offensive line in his career. He only allowed one pressure while playing left tackle and right guard in the national title game. He played both positions, only one pressure given up. So he is a natural pass protector because of his exploits playing tackle in college. Although I feel like just with his, his quickness limitations, he really projects more as a guard. And I feel like he can step in and be a starting guard pretty much right away.
Ooh, I mean, that is high praise. I mean,
Yeah.
I think for the Chargers in their situation, I mean, I think it's tough because, like, right now, the Chargers are saying they're planning on having Matt Filer stay their left guard, right? Which means Zion Johnson, they said they see as a right guard. He fits in there. And then you don't necessarily think of Salyer right now as a tackle. Obviously, he has that flexibility.
Yeah.
Brandon Staley said it as of right now. They see him as a tackle. And I mean, that's kind of how
As a
or as
guard.
a guard. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's always kind of how he projected, right?
Right.
Even saying that, though, I mean, the dude was obviously super successful at tackle. I mean, his tape was super impressive. I
Yeah.
mean, just the things that he does will obviously project well to being a guard. You don't imagine he's going to have that much of a struggle. Obviously, you're going up in a level of competition, but he's done playing guard before. Like, he's actually done it.
Yeah.
And he was the number one guard coming out as a high school, number 10 prospect overall in the country when he was coming out of high school. So this dude, I mean, has the resume for sure, as far as he's been thought of as one of the top players at this position for a long time. And
Yeah.
some of my notes, a moving house, I gave you that one for free. Very good strength, uproots defenders and moves them in the running game. Played all 5 positions. Long arms is another big part of this. Smooth mover, really savvy blocker too. I mean, you just don't see him super out of position very often. He does lead with his head sometimes and, puts his head down, which is not good because you're an offensive lineman. You got to see anything.
Yeah.
I think, David, I mean, the pick seems too good to be true. And we've seen, guys like Michael Onwenu go super late to the Patriots. And this
Yep.
draft class was really weird because some of the guards went super late and then Cole Strange gets drafted in the first round. So there was really no
But
consistency
that
on
was
the
the
interior.
Patriots, though, too. Let's be
Of
honest.
course,
The
but
Patriots a little weird in the draft process.
sure. But I think as far as like cons, like there's not a ton. I mean, he rated poor athletically as a
Yeah.
tackle, but I mean, if you run it as a guard, it's pretty average, and I'm not super worried about that. Could stick to his blocks a little longer, but like that is truly nitpicking. Like that, this dude is a super like clean prospect. He's huge. He definitely adds to the size, and I think for the Chargers specifically, David, it scares me because it makes me think that teams were passing on him for a medical reason. He did miss 4
Yeah.
games with an injury last season, and I couldn't find any real major injury concerns other than that. So I mean, that's just like it scares you just because like you're wondering how did it happen. This guy could have just potentially slipped through the cracks, and he's huge. But like even if it was a little bit of a concern to get this dude in the 6th round, I think gives the Chargers so many options, right? Because we know that they want to keep Filer at left guard, but like an offensive line, David, I put it on Twitter, right? If you have
Mhm.
Slater at left tackle, then you have Zion Johnson at left guard, Corey Linsley at center, Salyer at right guard over Brendan Hymus projected, right? Because that seems like what it would be right now.
Yeah.
And then you also end up having, Matt Filer at right tackle. Like, that's menacing. That looks impressive on paper, and we'll have to see how it all plays out. But like, this dude was not a 6th round prospect. Like, I mean, we'll see how how he ends up in the league. But like, Brandon Staley is also super close to the Georgia coaching staff. So like, you feel like they at least did their homework. If there
Oh,
was
yeah.
any like truly red flags, you think they would stay away with the relationship, having taken Mark Webb last year and also Trey McKitty. So like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, David, but what it does for the Chargers offensive line, building depth at that position, because this has been a 2-year rebuild, spending
Yeah.
more reinforcements on that and resources into that. Like, I love that.
Oh, yeah, how could you not? I mean, I absolutely adore this ad. I appreciate the fact that the Chargers were looking at, and what Brandon Staley said, looking at a champion. Like, this is a guy who won a national championship at Georgia.
They love
He's
winners, right?
Yeah, and he's going up against, as he put it, 10 first round, picks on the defensive line over the
Every
last
day at
couple of years,
practice. Yeah.
every single day. So
I
it's
wouldn't
like
want that job.
there's not much that this dude hasn't seen. And, the preparation and the players he's going up against, the size, the mentality, the ability, I think that all wraps up into a player that absolutely fell through the cracks. And the Chargers are going to be the largest benefactors of.
Yeah, and I think this is just Chargers putting in work that was much overdue, right? And even though, yeah, there are some positions that we'll talk about that they didn't address. Like, it's hard to argue against the value at this pick. in the 6th round because, I mean, I'm not going to anoint him the starting guard, right? I'm not going to anoint him in that position right now, but like, I like him better than I liked Brendan Hymas last year, and I liked Brendan Hymas last year. But I do think that this dude obviously has played some guard and has the body type that fits better at guard. I mean, he is a
Yeah.
little shorter, at least for a tackle. He's only 6'3", but like he has the length, and that's all that matters. And you get sucked into that black hole, your rush plan is going to be changed. Like there wasn't dude just beating this dude off the snap or beating him quickly. Like this dude made everybody in the SEC work. And as Brandon Staley put it, like I got to see this dude for 2 seasons against the best division in college football, like in those reps and what he was able to do after that. I mean, that says anything you need to know, kind of.
One, he has reps against Aiden Hutchinson where he's absolutely dominating him too. And Aiden Hutchinson went second overall
Right.
in the 2022 draft. So, I mean, just goes to show you like this dude does not shy away from top competition. And he is one of the best, pass protectors in this class, which is crazy that the Chargers are able to get him in the 6th round. So just continuing to add premium pieces to the offensive line, adding to the depth, the quality, the state of this offensive line is in so much better shape than it was even 2 years ago. It's been a
Yeah.
fantastic, phenomenal redemption project. They've done a great job on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even in a much better position than it was last year. I mean, just by
Yeah,
getting Zion Johnson, right? Yeah, you don't have Ode Abushi, but like when you have Zion Johnson and then you add in Jamari Salyer, like that's adding a lot of talent and depth because like Ode Abushi is still an option. Like if you feel like you
yeah.
need it, it's still there. Now you have Will Clapp too. And then I think the biggest thing is obviously like still a huge hole at right tackle as we see it right
Yes.
now. But I think the only thing you can hope for, David, is this: if it does hit the fan, right, that they're willing to go to plan B, which is the lineup I just laid out, right? Like if you have to know if
I
it's not working out, that you got to go sooner rather than later because the window's now. We've talked about that, right? Like you
yeah,
have to be able to admit you've made a mistake if it comes to that. And I'm not saying it will, right? This is all projection, and this just
sure.
gives you that flexibility to if things don't work out. If Trey Pipkins doesn't just grab that whole job by a stranglehold, and both of those dudes are struggling, you have these options.
I mean, to me, that's plan A. I mean, I know that that's not what the Chargers are saying that they want to do, but I think that's what they should do. I mean, that's the
Sure,
best possible combination of offensive linemen
as you
out
see it,
there,
yeah,
in my opinion, right?
yeah.
And in your opinion, I feel like that's what you need to do. I mean, put the best possible combination in front of Justin Herbert and in front of Austin Eckler and Isaiah Spiller, and go see what these guys are capable of doing with that size, that youth, that experience all mixed into one into that offensive line.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it just gives you so much more talent, and like we know the depth has been such an issue, and like this dude projects to me as more than depth. I mean, if
Yeah.
he can stay healthy, like this dude, maybe he's you feel like he's depth for a tackle or something if you need him, which I think he could still do that in spurts. Like he, I think, will be a starting guard in this league as a 6th round pick, which is a huge win. Like if this dude can stay healthy, and even if there are some medical red flags, I mean, I think it was still worth the pick in the 6th round to bring in a dude who is so talented, a national champion that somehow got way underrated through this draft process. And I mean, I think went criminally low compared to, I mean, even don't take my word for it. Take every other expert that had him as a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, right? This dude was not supposed to fall. And he did, and the Chargers won because of it, at least, as we see it right now. But they also added some more positions. We were waiting to see when they would add a cornerback. They ended up adding 2 late in the draft, and then they ended up adding a great super fullback that we have to talk about, like the next Peyton Hill is coming out kind of thing with just some ridiculous RAS scores. So if you're not excited about fullback talk, just don't know what to tell you. I mean, if I could just make this the fullback show, we would do it, but we can't. It's Locked On Chargers, and we will be back with you guys tomorrow as always. But until then, to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. We really appreciate you guys supporting all of our draft coverage. And we're excited that the draft is over because we're only talking about players that the Chargers have on their actual roster. And we'll be getting to the last 3 of those dudes on tomorrow's show. Make sure you guys are here with us. And you can also find the show on all of our social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, and also at Locked On Chargers on Instagram. You can also follow me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Droegemeier on Twitter at DroTalkSD. We want to hear your guys' draft grades too. If you guys want to call in and give your grades to the Locked On Chargers voicemail line, you can do that at 323-524-7924. But tomorrow we have the rest of the Chargers draft class and what their impact will be. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.